The divergent way that interest rate rises are hitting the economy, business and also households. In truth, there are signs of strong resilience in some parts of the economy, despite the deliberate effort by the Reserve Bank to reduce demand. So that raises questions about how many more rate rises are actually needed. One man with a clue is Ivan Colhoun, the Chief Economist of Corporate and Institutional at NAB, who joins me now. Ivan, many thanks for your time. So here's the problem, isn't it? There are so many different ways in which interest rate rises affect different parts of the community, but we're seeing incredible signs of resilience from some pockets.
Yes, I think so. And it's also the economy is doing very different things. If you remember COVID, we got locked down, we got the borders shut. A lot of spending shifted to goods then. You couldn't spend on services. The borders have reopened. We've got migrants coming back. We've got, shift back to services. There's pent-up demand for services. You mentioned cars coming, car sales being very strong. There's two factors there. I think there's the normalisation of supply chains, which have really allowed, there were huge backlogs of cars, so they're now coming into the country. And then we're also doing the whole energy transition. So demand for electric vehicles and hybrids is very strong. So there's just so much going on and so many different shocks, COVID shocks, Russia invaded Ukraine shocks, and now a monetary policy shock. And they affect everything slightly differently.
So if demand is not coming back as quickly as might have been imagined, and this has been something being discussed overseas, I've noticed as well, does that mean that central banks have to go even harder? They have to double down on these rate rises to make certain that they crush the demand to ensure that inflation does get eradicated out of our economies?
Well, I think I'd say there's two things. They always talk about rebalancing demand and supply, so it's not just crushing demand. And we have seen some supply adjustments coming through, most noticeably in manufacturing. And manufacturing typically tends to be, or some of the goods tend to be a bit more interest sensitive. And quite a few of them did very well during COVID. So we're seeing, certainly you can see in that chart, forward orders for NAB from our survey, retail, wholesale, quite soft. And that's consistent with the goods part of the economy slowing down, which we're seeing all around the world. But you can also see some of the services sectors are still very strong, transport, utilities. We can see recreational personal services. So it's quite a different story depending on what part of the economy you look at. And it's very hard, I think. The goods sector is soft and the services sector is hanging in there at the moment. And what are the underlying dynamics there? I think, firstly, firms are profitable. And when they're profitable, they keep investing and they keep their staff. And then people are fully employed, so they keep spending. So it probably does mean that we're going to see a bit more on the interest rate side.
You even saw in the latest monthly inflation data that the price of fruit and vegetables came down, of fuel came down, of travel came down. Yet conversely, what was still going up was those areas in the services industry. So you're starting to see, electricity prices still going up, things that people can't avoid. And that's where I kind of guess that inflation becomes sticky, and that grabs the attention of central banks, including our own Reserve Bank.
Yeah, they've all been talking all around the world. They're saying the same things. Now, I think that's reasonable because we're talking about common shocks. Everyone had COVID. Everyone had the same sorts of adjustments. Russia invaded Ukraine, which hit energy markets everywhere. And then, of course, interest rates have gone up all around, in most advanced economies across the world and by quite a long time. So we're seeing everything happening in just about every economy. On the inflation front, I think how I'm describing it, and there's the headline there, suggests there's these overlapping and sequential shocks. So I think it was firstly a goods shock, and then it's become a services shock. So I'm not so sure that inflation will stay as sticky as central banks expect it to. I think the services inflation will moderate, and I think there's a lot of goods inflation moderation to come. But in Australia, our inflation, our wages adjustment has been later than in other parts of the country. So not so much the next monthly number we see or the quarterly CPI number for quarter two, But quarter three, we're going to see the electricity price rises, other energy price rises, gas price rises.
Yes.
Telcos have been putting up their prices. Postal services are going up. Insurance is going up. You were interviewing someone from the Insurance Council.
Yes.
There's so many that are coming through in quarter three. And, of course, we've got that national wage case decision to come through.
So that's still to come through as well. Yeah, Ivan, I've got to wrap it up there, but many thanks for your time. And I know the NAB has got 2 more rate rises from the RBA pencilled in. Ivan Colhoun, many thanks for your time on the program today.
Thanks, Ross.